Okay. Sorry for the delay, folks. I was having a little bit of internet trouble there, and for some reason, I was unable to connect to the internet. It's Jeremy from jeremy.net, and I see that Ion Rocks is already in the chat. Thanks for showing up, man. As always, you can support my channel on patreon.com/Jeremy. For as little as $2 a month, you can get additional bonus videos and time lapses. You can also, if you're interested in buying any of my comic book work, they're available at amazon.jeremy.net or at justjeremy.net. Today, figure drawings. So let me see here. Let me lower this camera a little bit more to the bottom of the drawing table. And you guys will have to excuse me if I am clearing my throat a bit much, and I apologize if it gets annoying. I'm kind of fighting off a little bit of a cold or sore throat. Anyway, I go to figure drawing classes regularly once a week, and what I do once a month is just take the drawings off my drawing board, pick the ones that I'm going to use as part of my blog, and then discard the rest, maybe talk a little bit about what I do or don't like, and my normal stuff. I see American Swordfish is here. Why would you have to stream today? I have to study. You know what? I'm not going to hate on you if you watch the replay later. You can watch the replay later, make all your comments in real time, then I'll go back and answer them. Studying is more important. Do what you got to do. Finish your work. It's all good, man. I'll be here. All right. Figure drawings then. This one was at the top of the stack, and I wanted to leave it on here because there was one thing that I specifically wanted to talk about, and that is American Swordfish. I'll see you later, man. He just popped up to say peace out. All right, see you later, man. Let me scoot this up a little bit higher so you won't see as much distortion. So the problem I had was that I don't think I was drawing this particular skull. It was a different skull that I was addressing. But I think maybe because a lot of times when I finish a drawing in class, I'll turn back to other pages where drawings didn't come out right, and I'll do studies of what was wrong with them. Let me see if it's the page underneath has it. Nope, but what's funny is I was still obsessed with this problem. Let me pull both of these here. I'm sure that we will find it at some point going through here. But if you see this skull and this skull and this skull, one of the things that I'm really trying to focus on at this stage, and it sounds stupid to say it, but it's the fundamentals, the basic shape of the skull. Because a lot of times I can get to a drawing and do something that has maybe this level of, these are probably like, I think these are maybe 8 or 10-minute drawings. Like this one here, or actually I'd say this one is an 8-minute, and this is me coming in afterwards and saying, all right, what did I miss and get wrong? But a lot of times in these shorter poses, if you don't get the basic front, side, and top or bottom planes of a skull or a hand or the figure, or any part of the body, if you don't get those done first, if you don't get them correctly oriented in space, the whole thing's going to fall apart. You're just sort of doing it in mush. So there was one particular pose. I think the reason why I tend to get stuck on drawings like this, and when I see it, I will try to make a point to call it out. But the reason why I get stuck on shapes like this or poses like this is because it's something that appears to be relatively easy. It's a head that, let me see. I have multiple skulls because I have this tiny little buddy that sits in my my tray of drawing tools off to the side. Let me just little tray there with my whiteout. I don't know why I have string. Oh, I have string to keep figures held in certain poses when I'm using little figures for reference. Pens, pencils, scissors, brush, silly putty, erasers. Not particularly germane to our current conversation. But wow, this is gonna be I can already tell this is gonna be a tangenty episode. So you'll have to pardon my rambles. But I've got multiple skulls laying around the house. I've got this one. I also have this large one. I think it's a little bit smaller than life size. I've never really compared it to my skull to see if it's life size, and I don't remember when I ordered it. But it might actually be life size, but it just seems like it's weird to me to imagine that a human skull is actually only this big because I imagine them being larger. But I think maybe this is a life size skull. You know, I've got this buddy, this one, and then I have one that's sort of in between that's actually. This one's not as detailed. Or actually, it's as detailed, but I don't like the planes as much. But this one is actually attached to a skeleton. It does come off if I need to use it for drawing reference. Also, that small one that I just showed you that's on the skeleton, I have one of those that's separate from the skeleton that I have on my desk at work. Because sometimes when you're saving big ass files and you're waiting there for like 2 minutes for like a file that's 1 gig to save, I'm like, well, I'll sit there and doodle for a minute or two. You know. Anyway, why am I showing you all these skulls? The reason why is because, and let me put down the big one because I think that'll give us too much camera distortion. Let's say something like this one. It seems like the pose that I'm trying to depict should be fairly easy. It should be turned about almost perfect 3/4 and then angled up so that you're kind of looking up at the nose with that the bridge of the nose sort of breaking the plane that's the bottom of the kind of breaking this plane, like let's say like going right across the cheekbone. It's higher anyway, but when you look at it from below and you see how much it's like going up and almost touching the line of the brow, that's what I was trying to get in all. You know what? Maybe it is easier with this guy. I'm trying to find a way to pose it so it's above all of those drawings. Point being is that this pose looks like it should not be a difficult pose for me to draw. 3/4 is sort of like the main thing that we do after doing head-on and profile, like when you're learning as an art student. And then, you know, learning to turn the form slightly up. This does not seem like it should be a difficult pose. And yet, when I drew it in class, I butchered it. And I butchered it enough that I drew it again and again and again. And as you can see from the drawings here, I was making the head too squat. It's too short, it's too squished. And you know, it was probably turned more than 3/4 away because I don't think I would, even on my worst day, I don't think I would add that much of the back of the skull to it unless it was turned really far. So I think what I was looking at was probably something close to this. And the challenge that I think I was having was getting the, oh wait, no, that's what it was. It was rotated a little bit, so it's kind of looking underneath. I think that it's that challenge of looking underneath at the skull plus the turning, and I couldn't quite get the volumes right. Now, mind you, at the time that I was doing these, I was drawing these in class, trying to imagine why when I was looking at the model, I wasn't getting it right. I never actually sat down with an actual skull and tried to draw. Because I think that once I sit down with one of these, you get right to the basics. You can kind of see what it is that or at least I can see now, that if you just cut it into basically here's the side of the skull and here's the front of the skull, and then seeing about how much I can see of the underneath, it allows me to put a little bit more in perspective. So trying to draw this pose from my imagination or just from looking at a drawing that I butchered, that was like a normal figure drawing, I get obsessed with that kind of thing. I'm like, why am I making these mistakes? And I'm making them because it's just like, if you look at this as either a cube as opposed to a spherical concept, but if you look at like, this is this side, that's that side, the top plane is actually facing away from you, the underplane is here, but it's also going to be angled in and then down because of the underside of the chin, the underside of the jaw, and then the neck going down. Because I didn't get those basic volumes blocked in correctly. So honestly, just doing that makes me want to sit down and do a couple of quick studies off of these, correcting them, holding a skull. And people say that using reference is cheating. So yeah, this drawing, when I saw it, it wasn't necessarily that, oh, I like this drawing, which I do think this one came out very well. But again, as I always say, I learn from my mistakes. The drawings that I do poorly are the things that I learn the most from. So this will go in the blog to make a long story longer, including the hand, because I think that hand's decent. But I'm going to go back probably and try and do a couple of sketches of these on my own. Or depending on how long it takes us to go through the videos, I may do it at the end. It occurred to me, which not at the rate we're going, but if I blew through all of these drawings and you're like, oh, I've only been on for like, 40, 45 minutes. And I was like, oh, well, I'll sit and I'll draw at the end. But I've been taking a long time. I spent 15 minutes talking about one drawing, and I probably got a stack of about 50 sheets here. So let's get busy. I do like this as a drawing, the correction. And again, like I mentioned, this is the actual drawing I drew in 8 minutes in class. And, when you start out with a drawing, you're supposed to go, I say supposed to, there's different ways to skin a cat. But ideally, when you're doing figure drawing, you start off lightly laying in the tone and drawing lightly so that you can slowly come in, and as you figure out what direction different body parts are facing and the structure of the planes, you can darken them in the way that this is a darker drawing. I think I spent so much time futzing with the fates that I never got into. I didn't even complete, like, this skull feels too short. There's not enough dome up here at the top. But and this is also coming out of the tail end of a period I've had for the past few months where I've been really unhappy with a lot of my drawings, and I think it was just sort of like my sense of volume and proportion recalibrating, and it's starting to come back. But there's little things in here like the fact that it seems like the face is turning slightly to the right, yet I have the nose pointing slightly to the left. Little things like that. And same with the mouth. The mouth seems like it's dead on. So if I'd say my big problems with this drawing was that the mouth is dead on, the nose is turned this way, the facial plane is turned that way. And so you've got all these pieces wobbling. And I think this is one of the biggest steps in the growth of an artist is it's not about having other people come and help you with your drawings. It's one thing for me to be able to make these assessments and realize what's wrong and fix them here reviewing it with you. The next level of development is what I'm aspiring to, which is to be able to figure out these things as I'm drawing it and fix it as I'm drawing it, so that when I'm in class, I get stuff that's close to this, where everything is on the proper plane. Even though I completely flattened this part of the cheekbone and I went graphic designy here instead of really getting volumes, even this drawing, it's got its flaws as well. Let me bring this down a little bit because I want to make sure you guys can see the whole page, but I also don't want you guys to feel like you're not getting a good look at the drawings. So a little bit closer, hopefully that's a happy medium so you can see a little bit more of it. So that one will also go for the blog. And something I've been thinking about is I used to have a period where I would take these drawings and I would cover them in clear medium and sort of like cover them in clear medium and mount them to Bristol board and then paint a little light over them and frame them as either gifts or as something to sell at conventions. But I think what I'm going to start doing is just doing paintings based on sketches. So if I do have one that I particularly like, instead of like doing it like painting over the actual charcoal drawing, I might try just doing paintings based on doing like little small ones. So we'll see, of course, with the copious amounts of spare time that I have. I don't know if I'm going to put any of these in the blog because this one feels more finished, but this one went overboard. When I talk about defining the shape of the skull, this is too architectural. This is too structural. There's not enough softness here. There's not enough soft edges inside the form versus the hard edges on the outside and the soft form turning away. And the skull also feels a little, it's not that it's too large, it's that it's misshapen. Like maybe there's a little bit more, maybe the brow, instead of going in and then up and back, maybe it just goes in a softer curve off of here. And, looking at it doesn't feel quite right to me. And then this was me doing two little drawings based on this, trying to figure out again, what it was that I was doing wrong with it, trying either tilting the head up more or towards me more. Which again, these show you that these are little ways in which, at when observing the model, if I don't properly understand what they're doing, that's going to screw up all of the features that I put on it. Because if again, what it appears to me in this second sketch is that the head was tilted towards me a little bit more, but also that are. Let's go back to little buddy here. It appears that the head was. This is really good for demos. It appears that the head was tilted towards me, but looking up. And that challenge of doing things where that, you know, when you have a head turned towards you, you automatically are thinking it's going to be looking down a little bit. So having it turned towards you and then up. Let's see. Ion Rocks mentioned, he said that exercise I told you about will get you good and fast. I forgot what the exercise was, so shoot me another reference in the chat. I completely forgot what it is between this week and last week's video. I've had no time to do any study stuff other than actually going to figure drawing class. Pardon me for a second. I gotta clear my throat and take a little glass of water. I do kind of like this one. I think I might put that one in the blog. But this big drawing, although bigger, bigger is not better in this case. This one, I'm tempted to put the entire page in because this was just a series of, we were doing facial expressions with the model John Mackey, and he's always fantastic. He always gives a lot of really interesting, fun characters. Like, I could totally base a comic book character off of him. He's got, like, just a lot of great expressions. Even though some of these, like this drawing is super wonky, so is this one. I hardly got into the structure on that, but I think on a lot of these, I really enjoy, like, you know, a lot of these smaller ones also have a lot of nice little character to them. So I like this whole page. That one will probably go in the blog. It's just, let's see here. Okay, I think we're doing some hat studies here. I think this bottom one's not bad, but I don't think there's anything particularly interesting about the rest of them. Ooh, shaky camera there. Got to be careful. Sorry about that. Let's see. Usually I try to tell myself not to put sketches in if my reaction is like either they should be significantly good or I should significantly learn something. But these have a little bit of a charm to them. So I think maybe these two here, the other ones are feel a little bit. Well, you know what though? This is what I'm going for when I start the drawing is the primitive shape. Am I just in terms of the basic skull, the length of it, the directions it's facing, and knocking out all the basic features. This is what I'm aiming to get in the start, in that first like 30 seconds to 2 minutes of a drawing. Why would it take 2 minutes? Sometimes the model is taking a unique pose and it takes me a while to get the angle just right and I'm moving it around. So sometimes I spend a lot of time getting this part right. But if I get this right, then adding in eyes, lips, nose, mouth, all those other details, they all fit into the right place if I get this down first. So let's see. It's funny, we were studying a bunch of hats in class, and this is absolutely wretched. This is, if you compare how disconnected the top of this hat is to the underside of the mouth, that's just, yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely not going in. And this, I think it's interesting because I don't usually draw pirate hats. I don't think it's bad. Maybe that one will go in. Let's see. What else here? This ain't a bad page. Little flesh study there of just muscles pulling off of the mouth, wrapping around the skull. Let's see what else we got here. Well, I don't think there's anything wretched on this drawing. These are all just sort of like half-assed, unfinished sketches. I don't think there's anything special there. So, same here, a real simple study that doesn't feel like it has much proportion or volume to it. This one feels very flat in terms of how the face, the cheekbones fit in and wrap around and connect to the rest of the skull. So, pretty bland here. Don't think I'll include that one. Let's see. I think this was one where we were drawing other students or drawing each other in class, and I had time to go back and do a more finished. Like I actually felt like this drawing was not bad, and then just went in, did some cleanup, a little bit more space between the eyes and the bottom of the cheekbones, trying to get the mouth wrapping around, defining the lighting. I think that's actually one of the hardest things I have is like with larger drawings, I don't necessarily get time to go in and more clearly define the lights and darks. Like I'm defining them here, but they're not necessarily rendered with much darkness in contrast to the light. Like obviously the amount of contrast that's here is much more visible than what's in here. So this is me just sort of diagrammatically blocking it in so that I know where my lights, where the form starts turning around, turning into the shadow side. But yeah, I think I'm gonna put this one in. Let's see here. Same with this one. I think this one's pretty good, and this is probably after me realizing I wasn't putting tone in there to adding more tone, which again comes down to how much time do I have or how much time do I spend fixing the actual features or structure of the skull before I get to it. But I like this one. It'll go in. This one, I remember the guy was a particularly good model. He had a nice face, kind of like reminded me of Caesar a little bit. But my actual execution in all of these, when you ever see like 2 or 3 drawings, alternate versions of it, I really butchered the drawing. So I feel like I didn't get the sense of the volume of the skull, the fact that you can't really tell what the hairline is doing around here, because it feels like it's sort of like instead of it feeling like it's curving around it, like the opposite of a widow's peak, it just feels like it's sloping up the front of the skull in a poorly defined forehead. So that one I don't think I'll put in. That's not a great drawing. In fact, if I didn't have so many crappy drawings laying around, I would put this in the stack of drawings to do studies from. So. And when I say studies, I mean redrawing my bad figure drawings. This one I like a lot. This one I think is probably one of the best ones I've done in class to date. Simple, understated, not overly dark, not overly light, but it's got like a nice, other than the fact that I went up into the chin with that line, but that's just energy, that's just flow. That's not gonna slow me down. I think this is probably one of the better drawings I did this particular session. So yeah, that'll go in. I don't get many opportunities to pat myself on the back, so I'll take it when they come. Let's see. I see Epic Trilogies in the chat. Hey man, how you doing? Thanks for showing up. And Iron Rocks also threw in, I guess by virtue of being humans and hence different, we develop our efficiencies into style, whether we try to be ultra stylized or lean toward ultra realistic or lean more towards stylized. I think that that's true. I found that I lean towards stylized, but the artists that I admire the most are ones that have mastery over both their unique style and over realism. I'm trying to think of a way to just reframe that because I think I kind of garbled how I said it. But throughout high school and in college in art school, and then just talking to other artists over the course of my life, I've found that artists tend to. Hang on, give me a sec. I got to take some more water. Artists tend to fall into two different categories. They tend to be artists that can copy what is directly in front of them with great accuracy, but have a lot of difficulty making up drawings, imagining things. And then artists who have fantastic imaginations and can make up drawings that look really cool out of their imagination. They might seem a little bit off in terms of their volumes or proportions, but for the most part, their imagination more than makes up for it. But they are really not great at observational drawing and doing things that really have to fit in with day to day reality. And I think that's part of like artists that are either constantly taking in the world like a camera versus artists that are constantly emoting from inside of them. And the the artists that I find are the best are the ones that can meld the two. They are both taking in the world and processing it and emoting and merging all of that at the same time. And those I think are the most amazing artists that produce the most revolutionary work. At least the most exciting work. Because they can work in any direction. Let's see here. I think Drew Struzan is somebody I would put definitely in that category. I do feel like this drawing is pretty decent, except for the fact that her face feels like it's sort of glued onto the skull. Like this skull might actually be too big for her face. Well, not really. If I were to bring it in and bring the so that she's got a lot of hair back there, but if I were to clearly define the shape of her skull in a little bit more, and then also this cheekbone is ill defined. It really should. It feels like it's a little bit too large of a jaw for a woman coming down there. Like it feels like it should be curving a little bit more, a little bit softer, and that this should also be moved instead of the ear being back here. It feels like the ear should be moved up to about here, and the rest of the skull pulled in a little bit too. So this one's a little bit out of proportion. I think that those little changes could knock it into proportion. This one is a really good candidate for doing a figure drawing redo because everything else is really nice in here. The eyes, the nose, the lips. And a lot of times I forget about fixing those other details because I get so fixated. Well, not details, but I sometimes neglect those fundamental structural areas because I am fixated on, oh, I see some details that I can really study here. So I spent more time studying these things. So a lot of times my eyes and my noses really are just sort of like very simple volumes without much rendering in them. And I've been trying to pay attention to that in this class too. I think that this drawing was me trying to fix and address some of those issues. See Travis Frederick in the chat. What up, Travis? Thanks for popping in. Let's see. So, yeah, that's the relationship between these two. But just in doing that, going from this drawing to that one, that the Greek nose she had going straight down, I completely missed that. The shape and upturn of the mouth and the size of the chin, I completely missed that. So sometimes when I'm doing these quick studies, I'll go back and I'll fix these things and end up neglecting some other things. Overall, I think that this is not a great drawing, but I do think it's an interesting drawing. I think I'm going to put it in the blog. Sometimes interesting is enough for me, which is weird because normally I don't find myself saying that. I like this one, very simple, but even without adding values, I just got the basic structure of the head and the shape of the hair in. The rest of these are pretty wonky, but I think that this one is good. That'll go in. see, on this one, we had the model was Mark Snyder. He's great. He's an older guy, looks kind of like Popeye, but he's super yoked and ripped, but like a really sweet, friendly kind of guy. Anyway, just drawing his muscles because he's just. I think that even though the class is heads, hands, and feet, we were drawing him with his shirt off, so we could just also work in his neck muscles, and he just has like these amazing arms. Like I wish to God I were in his shape when I'm his age. I see Travis said that these are some awesome head studies. Thank you, Travis. You know, I'm even though most of the time I'm sitting here shooting down all the things that are wrong with them. I appreciate that. That's part of the process is coming in here, analyzing, figuring out how to kick it up to the next level. This one, I think if I had just made the ear feel like it wasn't pasted on and made it feel like it was actually rounded in space. Right now, the ear feels almost as if I just sort of said, oh, this is an ear, and slapped it onto the side instead of giving you the sense of this is an object like here's the surface of the skull. The ear is coming slightly off towards you. Like if you can see the difference between what looks like just a flat ear pasted onto a skull versus it coming off, that alone I think would have made it enough that I would have liked this drawing and said, oh yeah, it goes in. I think I might just photograph just this little section down here with Mark's arm and his hands. The class is it's taught by Carl Ganas at the Animation Guild. It's heads, hands, and feet. So I think in this one, I was doing the head and hands. It was one of those where I think it was just open, grab what you want to grab. If you want to draw the hands, draw the hands. If you want to draw the head, draw the head. So I had enough time to work in head and hands and do a little more figure work, getting more of his body in there. So let's see here. Let's see, this one just feels a little too wonky for me. This one, again, talking about volumes, that it feels like when you get up here, this becomes flat instead of turning away from us. I mean, who knows? Maybe I could have saved that drawing just by adding some tone up there, because it might not necessarily even be that it's too much skull. It's just I'm not conveying the skull turning away because the light was coming from the top. But yeah, this one is just feeling a little bit off. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in here particularly that I feel like it needs to be, posted on the blog. Just skip this page. Some feet. Feet are hard. Feet are real hard. So there's a whole class where we're doing it. I don't know. Some of these aren't bad. This one, that one. Problem with this one is that I didn't get the sense of, like I drew the ankle bone in there, but I didn't have the ankle and then going back into the part of the foot before you get to rounding back out to the heel. Like it feels like this should be coming, here's your leg, out with the ankle, then back in, and then back out again. And that part, I feel like I missed a little bit. Travis says he loves the feet. Thank you, Travis. I appreciate it. You know what? You pushed me over to the positive side. This page will go in the blog. Now on this page, this foot is just, it's ass. It's me trying to draw planes on the foot, which the whole point is that it does soft turns. Same with this one. I would say this one is probably the only one on the page that isn't horrible. But, well, this one on a just basic primitive level isn't bad, but this page I feel definitely falls short of the previous page. Maybe I'll take photos of this one because this particular one ain't that bad. This is another one where a softer touch could have done more. Like I got too heavy-handed in here. It's not necessarily that what I drew in here is horrible. It's that I drew it too darkly and made it too much of a hard turn. Because here's an interesting thing about light. For those of you that are experienced, you know this already. You don't need anybody to tell it to you. But for those that are studying, and this is something that I constantly have to remind myself of, is that light is not simply light and dark. Light is a description of form, in the sense that if you look at this book, it's a sketchbook. Right now it's facing towards the light. You can see it's kind of lit. As I turn it, you know what, let me turn off one of these. There we go, pow. So you can obviously see which side is the light side. Now, as you turn it away from the form, it's getting darker and darker and darker. Light and dark is not just about design. You do want to use it where you design the figure to kind of create an interesting pattern, an interesting silhouette, create interesting forms on the shape. I mean, on your drawing, but but equally as important, I would say possibly more. Yeah, more important, because if your volumes don't really agree, I think it kind of doesn't really matter if the design that's making is interesting, unless you're somebody who's just really, really good at designing stuff. And somebody who's usually that good knows how to make both the volumes and their designs agree. But the fact that these turns are subtle turns, and I put too much tone in there to make them harsh turns, because the difference between, like, if you look at this versus this, that's a hard turn. When you look at something like, see our old buddy Scully right here. Right here, when this goes in, that's a hard turn. It's not even a turn, it just drops off. Let me say something better like the cheekbone. Okay, look at that. The difference between here going to there, that's a pretty hard turn. Versus, let's say you've got this part of the skull here. See how even though it's turning, it's a real subtle turn, and it doesn't really get that dark until the edge. That's more of, and even up here, you have to remember that you're not just looking at a head that's going up and then stopping. It's going up and it's turning away and away and away and away and away, which is why it's darker up here than it is down here, because this is actually more facing towards the light in this region as opposed to getting out here. That's where this drawing fails. It's not because the objects don't change shape in the way that's described here, with the ankle coming out, and then sitting on the surface of the foot, and then having the actual pad where it hits the ground coming out a little bit and then back in. All of those things happen, but I went too dark too fast, and that ruined what should be subtle transitions. God, if I could only think this elegantly about the work while I'm drawing it, all of my stuff coming out of figure drawing class would be awesome. I'm getting there, though. I think about these things. I try to keep them in the forefront of my mind, and hopefully it'll move me closer to that each time I get in front of the model. Let's see. So yeah, nothing on this page. It's a decent drawing of Mark, but I don't really feel like it's... Something about it just feels wonky to me. Yeah. Let's see. Some hands, some feet. Again, too dark in there in terms of this shadow that's supposed to be defining the top surface versus this side surface turning away. Right in here. Oh, this was something where he was actually stretching, so his hand was coming up and across the foot, and so I was drawing the foot and hand together, and I didn't get any of this shadow because all of this must have been in shadow, so didn't get any of that. Super heavy-handed with a lot of these. Yeah, don't like any of these either, really. Or these. Yeah, this is during a period a few weeks ago. Like, I was going through, and I think I mentioned this the last time I did a drawing on figure drawing, that I was going through a period where just everything I was doing was just wrong. just wrong. I look at this and I can clearly see that the back of this skull is too high and that I'm not doing enough of a the transition here. It's not that there isn't a more distinct transition between the front plane and the side plane, but it just feels off, like as if you've got a bunch of planes that should be parallel that are slightly one slightly turned toward you and one slightly turned away from you. Like I feel like that's what's happening on the top part of the fit on the skull versus the cheek versus the nose. All little simple subtle things. And that happens sometimes. I go through periods where it's just not working. It's coming off wonky. I'm not sure why this is on the side. Maybe I started drawing the page sideways and then turned it. A bunch of small thumbnails. I'd say the only one that's actually really nice. I mean, they're not thumbnails in the comic booky sense, but these are probably like really short poses, either 5 minute or 2 minute. I think this is the only one on there that I think is probably any good, but I've got enough other ones that I think are better that I don't desperately feel the need. Plus, there was something going on here with the cheekbones that I wasn't properly getting. Like I'm trying to get that sense of a lot of our models we have in class have very high cheekbones. And it's a quality that I think is very expressive in male and female models. But trying to get it, when you get that underside of a high cheekbone, it's how do you put that shadow in there in a way that doesn't make it feel like there is a hard edge. You want to feel more like I want to feel like there's an apple, like apple cheeks, like there's an apple under the surface of the skin pushing up because it's like it gives like a nice, beautiful, elegant rounding to it. And in this, it just feels more like there's just an edge. So it's something that on volumes I'm still working on expressing properly. I know what it looks like in my mind, but depicting that on the page is not. I haven't fully formed that yet. I'm still working through that. Ugh. Yeah, I don't like anything on this page. Let's see. Same here. Yeah, none of these are going in the blog. Let's see. That's not the complete end of the stack because this was me using up the last of a pad of newsprint. Then I switched over to. I just got a stack of newsprint that's just loose sheets. So these are the start of that batch right there. So let's see. And again, Travis saying those heads are awesome. I appreciate the love, man. Thank you. I'm trying. I like this hand, and let me bring the camera down so you can get a little closer look at it. A little closer. So it's a small hand in comparison to like the size of stuff I normally draw. And it's not particularly clean. It's very messy. But I do feel like I got a sense of communicating the volumes as well as, right, that's a little too much. I feel like I did a good job communicating the volumes, the sense of front, top, and side, at the same time as communicating the actual tendons and the knuckles and the anatomy. Like I have a hard time with knuckles because they're these forms that are, underneath the surface, but then, they come out and they've got tendons coming off. It's because of the subtleness of the pinky finger. Well, you know what? You're right. The pinky finger does look a little bit off. But what's interesting is our instructor intentionally asked the models not to take. Let me try and think of a way to describe it. What he specifically asked the models is not to do utilitarian hands. And what he means by that is, and it is possible that the pinky is a little bit off because it feels, normally you would expect the pinky to be turning away a little bit. But a lot of times, instead of taking a hand that's like, oh, make a fist, or oh, making high five, But what it is that he will ask the model to take poses that are just putting them in weird, gnarly positions. So I think that this is one of those where it's sort of like if I'm trying to do what she's doing, the main thing is the fact that I definitely put too much bend. Is first off, if this is bending in anything, you're going to get sort of an arcing down because that's the way the bone curves. But I think the fact that I put a little bit of an arch, like a weird arch like that, so that's a good eye that you caught that. But a lot of times the model gives us these really interesting, weird, intricate finger poses, and it's like they're just trying to draw hands that have a character to them, not necessarily doing a specific thing. But let's see what else we got here. Oh, and I see that's Night Sabers in the chat. Thanks for popping in and watching. Let's see here. Yeah, I think this particular page, they aren't necessarily ones that it's less that they're dead on for me. Like these ones are perfect executions, but I kind of like the feel of this face and of that one, so I probably won't include the other ones, but I think that these two might go in. And the rest of these, let's see. I think these are probably 5-minute poses, and just for instance, like stuff like this, like the fact that the head just stops right there, like that head is way too short. It should continue up a little bit more, probably about up to here. Well, their forehead should probably go up a little bit more. I cut it back too soon and then up. So there's definitely structural flaws in all of these. Oh yeah, we were doing expressions. So these were probably shorter, probably like 2-minute poses at the end. Just having her sticking her tongue out the end, which was kind of cute. But that said, I don't think there's anything on this page that I'm going to include in the blog. And these just misshapen. Like the fact that it looks like this part of the head is facing that way, and then the mouth feels like it's more profile-y. And that's another one of those things that I've been fighting through that over the past few months. It's like drawing stuff where different parts of the skull don't feel like they're on the same planes. And I think that's true of all of these. And Night Saber says, still looks good though. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know, a lot of this isn't necessarily about me kicking myself in the butt or like saying, oh, I suck. It's more of, I think that I draw well enough that I can draw convincing figures and convincing heads in terms of what I draw now is quote unquote all right for making comics. I can communicate the story that I want to tell. Most of my work is me working on writing and drawing my comic book. But my larger goal is simply to improve my draftsmanship, to be able to draw anything that I can imagine. And when I see things, my whole point in reviewing these is to try and be aware of things that, for instance, I do feel like this is a good drawing. It's got character to it. In fact, I think just because of the shape of the head, I may actually end up putting this one in the blog. But just because they have character, it doesn't mean that should let me off the hook. The idea should be that in theory, I'm pushing myself so that I can have character and structure. That's the goal, is to combine, those two things to make something stronger than what I'm currently doing. So a lot of this analysis, like none of it's coming from a negative or self-hating place. I mean, I love drawing. I see Jay King popped up in the chat. How you doing, man? Good to see you. I'm just going through some figure drawings here. We're getting close to the end of the stack here, which is good because we're also closing in on an hour. So let's see. And again, this one just a quick eye study. I've realized that a lot of times when I'm drawing larger figures, I spend so little time actually doing the eye. This eye study is actually a detail of me trying to work out the fact that this felt like me half-assing it. And like, I feel like I didn't even really indicate the proper eye. There's no lower lid. You just get like the cheekbone, and then you see the pupil up there, but there's no lower lid that I put in. There should be a definition between that and then having the space between the upper lid and the actual like part of the skull that rounds the brow. And even this study was not me capturing what I missed here. There's more for me to go into in terms of I could do a lot more, probably like 3 or 4 sketches trying to work out how this should properly look. Bam! Close-up hands. So again, back to hands. This one's not bad. I must be getting soft because there was definitely a period where if I felt like then that was definitely a no in terms of putting it into the blog. Maybe it's just that I'm tired. Maybe it's just my mood. I don't know. But I'm like, I'll put it in. And then these, I'm getting a bit more diagrammy in some of these drawings, but it's me trying to understand structurally. Like for instance, this drawing feels mostly flat, and the things where there are volumes, the volumes feel like they're in the wrong place. And Travis said impressive. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. So I came back down here trying to clearly define the tone in here isn't me trying to put tone in just to put in detail. The tone here is me trying to figure out how to use light to define the forms more. So to try and clearly define the underside of the chin, trying to decide better. This is one of those models that has the high cheekbones I was talking about. And when you're drawing the underside of high cheekbones and the light is coming around it, it's like little eggy here. When you, whoops, let's leave that one on, turn this one off so it's more the direction. You know, like obviously you've got the shadow side on this, and the challenge that I have is when you're having a model and they're very strongly lit. Like let me move it over here more, so it's like it's not about being farther away from the light, it's more like having the light be more profile-y. So when you've got a model and they're being hit really directly hard from this side, you get the cheekbone coming out of the surface, but then you don't want to have it go as far dark as this. It's because it comes out and then back into the surface of the skin. And that's something that I have a challenge depicting. It's just that it's a very subtle thing. It's a simple thing, but a subtle thing. And those are the things that are hardest to describe. Simple, clear things are easy. Subtle things are hard. But yeah, so this was just me doing another diagram of that drawing to try and refine and figure out, work out, working out, I guess, the planes, trying to get all of the features aligned properly, having the eye turn more away. In fact, even look at this now, I feel like that eye should turn even further away. So nah, that one's not going in the blog. Let's see here. Adjust the camera a little bit. Is this whole stack upside down or just this one drawing? Yeah, let's just rotate the stack here. All right. Some more hands. And again, this model doing stuff that's not necessarily poses that you would find in everyday life, but poses that force us to think about how these forms wrap around each other. And this, I don't feel like I really captured any of these volumes with any level of subtlety or accuracy. These feel still pretty primitive to me. So we're gonna let those go. And I think this drawing is just me doing, usually Carl Ganas does demos in class, and I tend to draw with him while he's doing the demo. Sometimes I'm either doing little studies or like fixing my other drawings. And sometimes I'm doing, sometimes I try to draw his demos with him while he's drawing them so I can understand what he's doing. The only time I'm not doing that is if there's a particular drawing from the previous set of poses the model did that I really need trying to work out. But this was first me drawing it and it feeling a little bit off. This is me doing another drawing based on that, like saying, well, let me work in some more of the details that he had there, and then me looking at this drawing and seeing how awful it is, and saying, all right, why is this drawing awful when I'm drawing it from the diagram that the instructor is showing me? And I said, all right, one, front plane, side plane. Two, define those cheekbones in the turn. Three, make sure that the actual volume of the head fits what the volume of the head should be. I mean, look at this thing, like how much it feels like somebody just punched this dude in the jaw, and this whole section, like over here, just is just shifted off to the side from where the skull is. Like someone just knocked his face to the side. But this is really more about me moving the feature, forcing those features back into proper alignment with the rest of the skull, this lower drawing. And I guess kind of proving to myself, oh wait, I'm not just drawing shitty drawings here. If I try, I can make this look good. And let's see. And then Jimmy King in the chat said, having trouble with my forehead and hairline. Can you please explain? And Ion Rock says, you can't let your learning practices transfer to your professional work. First off, I'm going to mention Ion Rock's au contraire, mon frère. I am actually actively trying to take what I learn in figure drawing class on any given day, and I am trying to move it into my comic stuff. Like, let me see. This is a page that's up on my wall that I just finished last week. And in this page, I really, for here, was trying to like think about like hair, like look at the shape of the skull. And on this one, this is one where this face still doesn't really line up that well, but the hair I had before was even worse. I think I was drawing this one last week during last week's live stream. But a friend of mine told me, you know what, just paint out the hair and then go in with white and paint it again. And now it feels much more in line with this one. But when I'm doing stuff like the hands, I'm trying to do like the soft turn. Not the soft turn, but just showing that turn, that definition between the side that is hitting light. And then same down here, this side where there's shadow versus the light side doing the areas turning, trying to use the hatching and the ink, like all these things I'm trying to go through and use what I'm doing here in this in terms of defining these planes. I'm trying to actively use this while I'm drawing comics. So that's really one of the biggest helps for me is doing this stuff. This stuff directly not interferes, it directly interacts with and improves my comic work. And he said Iron Rocks also says every line, every detail matches up your efficiency. I don't really think that it's that every line and detail matches my efficiency. What I really try to do is make every line say something. I try to make every line. The idea is more sort of like, for instance, with this head, you want to start with the simple skull and you know, kind of an egg shape. Everything should fall in line with that. So like, let's say, go down to this one, since this one I'm a little happier with. Once I define where the head turns from the front plane to the side plane, I want to make sure that these planes feel like they have a similar lighting to this side. Like I want them to feel like they're facing the same direction. I want the eyeball, it being rounded, to also, like you can even see in here, there's a little bit of an extra shadow on the lid as the lid turns away. And then also doing that on this side. It's trying to make all of the things within the larger form agree with each other. So it's not detail for detail's sake. It's detail as description to create a fuller sense of what the figure is doing, or what, you know, what their environment is, or what you're trying to say about them. And part of that is about being selective, because you don't want to draw every single detail. It's not about drawing everything with photorealistic accuracy. It's about picking the details that are important to you and then describing those details accurately. So it's not about efficiency, it's about accuracy. Now, on the question about explaining the forehead and the hairline, well, they're two different things. Let me grab a book real quick. Our old buddy Andrew Loomis figure drawing for all it's worth. So let me go into where he's got head drawings in here. Let's see. The figure. Now these are heads, but they aren't the structural sketches of the head. Let's see here. Where is... Let's see here. Even Bridgman's got a heads, hands, and feet section. Or not Bridgman, even Loomis. I would say that if you just, if you were to go online and you Google Andrew Loomis heads, you will probably find somewhere an image of this diagram. Because for the longest time, even before I had this book, I would look at this diagram. Because this diagram is basically what you really need in terms of constructing a head. Because they show you the basic general shape of the skull. And then he shows you, like if you see this cut that makes the side of the skull, that also is about where the hairline lines up. Really, all you need is to understand where to put the brow line, and then understand where to put the hairline. Now, I know you're saying you need help with it because you don't understand. This is what the thing is, the brow line, again, depending on the shape of the skull, there's varieties of shapes of brows, but it tends to be sort of through the center of that spherical part. Now, where the hairline is different depending on age, gender, just genetics. Some people, will have a full head of hair even into old age. Some people start having their hair receding before they even get out of high school. So you can't necessarily say, oh, this is what the relationship between the brow and the hair is. What you need to do is focus on, for Jimmy, I'd say the thing that will help you the most is, first off, get a diagram, find this Loomis diagram online somewhere, have it, do studies from this, then do imaginary, either grab from some photos or just doing some imaginary studies of this concept in different positions. Turn it around in your mind. So some way he's got it facing to the left and down in this one. He's got it facing up and to the right on this one. Try doing variations on this. But the thing you really want to understand is, where is the brow? And then you can experiment with doing different hairlines based on this brow. Because what you'll see is that the hairline, this space is going to change from person to person. You can decide, I'm going to always make it that length. And then from there, like as a starting point, you may say you may always make it a certain length, and then adjust it if the character has a higher brow or a lower brow or a widow's peak or whatever. But you're trying to say, well, what is this space between here and here? And the thing is that space is going to move around. It's going to change. That's probably why you're having trouble with it. What you really need to focus on is making sure your brow is always in the right place, because that's going to be the consistent thing. And this is the thing that you're going to judge where to place it against that. So I hope that is useful in studying the forehead and the hairline. So we just got a couple more here that I'll go through. This is our model Kim. Normally I'm not that happy when I do drawings this large. This one was a 10-minute, but I actually am really pleased with how this one came out. So we'll take that one. And this one, I think this was this was a 15-minute pose. And I guess you give me an extra 5 minutes, you get more rendering, you get more light and tone. So this one, in fact, wow, I'm tempted to just dump the one before that, because I feel like this one, if you put them side by side, you can definitely see where the extra 5 minutes went. I'll I'll put them both in. I may end up deciding not to post the other one. I do that sometimes where some of the stuff I say on here, I'm going to put in my blog. I'll have it. And then the day I'm actually posting stuff in my blog, I'll look at it, I'll be like, I don't like this drawing anymore. And I just choose not to. So let's see. And just some doodles during class. Let's see. This was a 10-minute. I think I gave her a little bit too much chin. It's a little too hard. But it's still interesting. And this one, it's funny. A 10-minute pose. It's got a fair amount of rendering to it, even though it's kind of a back view. But I actually think that this one came out pretty well too. Remember all those feet I was drawing that I hated? This is closer to what I should have been doing, where the transitions between the light and the dark were a little bit softer. This ankle, still a bit much, not completely happy with that. And then this foot, ugh, I don't even know what I was doing with that, with the underside of that foot there. Yeah, the more I look at it, at first I was like, oh, this is much better, much closer to what I was going towards. And then after looking at it for 30 seconds, I'm like, nah, I'm not putting any of these in the blog. Woo. This one could have been a good drawing if I'd gotten a little bit more of feeling like there's a side plane on the side of the Achilles tendon. Instead, it just feels like it goes out, and then there's like a rope that is the Achilles tendon. Instead of giving you a little bit more of space here between the tendon and the ankle, like a little bit more of a plane, a little bit of a side. And I think I probably could have communicated that better on actually drawing the heel better as well. So it was a drawing that had potential to be good, but didn't quite nail it. It's just a page with some notes. I was doing some studies off of some diagrams that we were drawing in class. But I do rather like this underside of the foot. This one I feel like it captures kind of the main thing we're going for in studying in class. Let's see. Flip this back over. This is kind of a similar thing, although I don't feel like this particular transition from heel into the underside of the foot is as elegant as it could be. And this is way too long and elongated. We'll dump those. And these, meh, a little too architectural, a little too much of a hard edge, and it didn't quite. Usually if I do a hard edge, the point of it is that I'm trying to really clearly say this is the front and this is the side and define the planes. And unfortunately, it seemed like I failed at both on these. This is me trying to redraw this drawing, which didn't come out well. So now some hands. And I think this is when I was starting to feel my oats a little bit more. Like this is one that I don't think is a great drawing, but I do feel like it's dynamic. It has energy to it and it has life to it. And even though I probably went a little bit too dark in the tone there, that I was able to define. When you can combine energy with actual forms and volumes and make it feel structural, that's kind of the big thing I'm going for. It's a little bit lumpy in here that that's problematic, but overall I'm pretty happy with this whole page. I think I'll just put that in as is. It was a quick drawing of our lovely model that night, Stacy Walker. Let's see. This is me getting a little bit too conceptually with how I'm describing the flow of the forms in the finger, because that really isn't accurate to what a finger feels like. I mean, it's more like it just sort of like slides down a little bit. And the fact that I kind of drew it more like arching over, and then down again. Yeah, I need to spend more time looking at real fingers. I just really was getting too caught up in rhythm and making up my own rhythm instead of accurately observing. Because this is not, even though I made a diagram of it, it's not really accurate to what's going on with the finger. So, but that's why I take these classes, so I can sit there and study and compare what I think is happening versus what's really happening. And that's the reason why I go and look at my work afterwards. And that's, I think, an expression that covers up how I feel about a lot of these. Just face plant, just. But that's okay. And Travis said, "You've inspired me to. I believe you said hone my skill as an artist. I think that's what you were saying there. It looks like autocorrect got up in the mix. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That's exactly the hope that I hope you guys have, because I don't feel like I never want this to come off as this is a pity party. This is the skill. I think that me showing you my work and my personal criticisms of it, I hope that it inspires you not to sit there and just say, oh, I don't like my work. Oh, I don't draw well enough. What's useful is to learn how to assess what is wrong. You need to treat it more like, instead of just saying, oh, I'm an artist and either I'm making good art or I'm making bad art, you need to look at it like you're building a car. And if you're driving that car and it's idling, right, like, oh, well, let me take apart the carburetor. Let me see if the fuel injector's working. Let me check the spark plugs. If the car's running rough, do I need to replace my shock absorbers? Are the tires going bald? There's all sorts of different things. And being an artist, yes, we're trying to express things, but there is as much of a science to it as there is in art. And the science part is about learning how to assess your work, understand where it isn't doing what you want it to do, and then being able to take steps to try and learn how to make it do what you want to do. It's a matter of just learning a particular rendering technique. Maybe it's about rethinking how you conceive of certain forms in terms of how you look at it in your imagination compared to how it looks in reality. But that's what all of this whole video has been about, is me looking at this work and saying, all right, well, what's not working with it? And what are a list of things that I need to work on when I go into figure drawing class next week? And when I sit down on my own and do studies of these drawings that didn't come out well, what do I need to work on to make myself better? That's what the approach I hope that you're all taking from this and the message you're taking from these videos. Anyway, that's it for now. I've enjoyed you guys spending time with me. Like I said before, you can support on Patreon for as much as $2 a month. There'll be some bonus videos I've been posting. There's already one up that is a tour of my art books, my reference bookshelf. There's also another one on there that's another bonus time lapse. In addition, there's additional blogs posted throughout the week with figure drawing sketches. And again, for any of you who've been curious about my comics, you can check them out at amazon.jeremy.net or just jeremy.net. And that's it for now. Go be creative.